Hello everybody, I am Saravani and I am here to present to you about an interesting economy. As most of you be aware of this country that serves as an exotic gateway to drug cartels, I will waste no more time in introducing to you the city of Cathedrals, Mexico, and about its economy. Before we begin, I'd like to divide this video into three parts. The first part of this video will deal with the economic history of Mexico, while the second part will deal with the political and economic systems that are currently in place in Mexico, and which will also talk about the political reforms that the country have gone through. Final part of this video will conclude suggesting predictions made by economics across the globe. Venga vemos a echar un vistazo a él. Trust me guys, Spanish isn't that difficult. As we are going to talk about the economic history of Mexico, it would be wrong if I fail to mention about the man in this picture. He is Porfirio Diaz. It was during his presidential regime that Mexico saw a political and economical stability in them. We would now look into the history of Mexico in detail. Every national would have cherished their country's independence, but this was not the case with the Mexican economists. Since Mexico's independence in 1821, the country has had a tough time because the Spanish merchants returned to Spain. This resulted in stopping the supply of mercury, thereby impacting the silver mines in the country. After this long struggle, there were reforms in the country during the year 1850, which lasted until 1861, and from 1867 to 1876. These reforms were attempts to modernize the Mexican economy by diminishing the economic power of Roman Catholic Church, which was predominant by then. The major storm after these reforms that hit Mexico was the famous Mexican Revolution that lasted for 10 long years from 1910. Though Mexico had a better time since late 18th century, they benefited hugely after their participation in World War II. This post-World War period is said to be the Mexican miracle. This years would be 1946 to 1970. Mexican miracle happened only because of import substitution industrialization, abbreviated as ISI. That was a predominant term in Latin America until the late 80s. ISI, as its name suggests, was introduced or implemented to stop a whole lot of products being imported from foreign countries. Having fully utilized the ISI limits, Mexico were in search of new economic models that would help improve themselves. And this resulted in their decision to set up huge oil reserves in the Gulf of the country during the late 1970s. The problem with setting up this huge oil reserves would definitely be the funds. And to resolve this issue, the funds were borrowed from foreign banks when they dig their own grave. Mexico's financial crisis was an outcome of the decline in oil prices in the late 1980s. Mexico's continued dependence on oil revenues hit them hard and will continue to hit them hard. Whenever the oil prices go down, they will have to suffer, and this is what is happening even now. Let us now discuss about the reforms that the country have gone through. Mexico is one of the finest and freest trading countries in the world and enjoys a more diversified and more stable economy than most of its Latin American peers. Boston Consulting Group estimates that Mexico's middle class is expanding by 3%. In other words, it is expanding to about 2 million people a year, which is possible only because of those reforms. 2 years ago, Peña Nieto was elected as the President of Mexico, and he was remarkably known for these reforms that I am talking about. This included corporate tax loopholes being closed and a revamp of Mexico's education system. For the first time in a period of 75 years, the energy sector was open to private investment. The reforms focuses on improving productivity, thereby helping the economy grow at a faster rate. The signs that these reforms are working included falls in telecom and electricity prices that were significant. Though I said economic reforms are working in Mexico, their growth since the mid-1980s has been modest. During the decade that followed the severe economic crisis of 1982 to 85, there were a lot of market-oriented reforms that ended in the implementation of NAFTA in the year 1994. NAFTA stands for North American Free Trade Agreement, which included privatization of government-operated firms and opening the economy to trade and foreign investment. The growth of Mexico is especially disappointing if it is compared with that of China, which is another large economy that opened itself to trade after Mexico. For the rest of this video, we would compare the economies of China and Mexico, since these two countries are the major exporters and importers of the world. The first factor would be poorly functioning financial system and lack of contract enforcement. Researchers have found that the traded goods sector in Mexico grew rapidly after the financial crisis of 1994-95, while the non-traded sector was stagnant. This occurred because domestic bank lending dried up after the crisis, but the traded goods sector were funded by foreign banks and investors. The non-traded sectors, unfortunately, are not able to do it. The reason behind lending being obsolete was poor contract enforcement. Though the Chinese had the same problem, they were able to show significant economic growth without reforming any of these systems. The other factors that would contribute are rigid labor market and institutional space in agricultural sector. Though these factors kept Mexico a beneficiary of its reforms, the growth isn't showing an outward curve. With Chinese being at a lower level of development, these factors did not impede their growth. Another significant factor would be the differences in productivity between the two countries. The productivity differences between entering and exiting firms during 1998 to 2005 attributed to China's drastic growth, whereas Mexico's productivity was not in terms with that of them. The trade and foreign investment reforms in Mexico did help improve productivity in the manufacturing sector, leaving behind the rest of their economy in a duller phase. Lack of competition is also a factor that attributed to this dull phase. We can also hypothesize that China has been able to grow because of its strong central government, which Mexico failed to concentrate on. Until China joined the World Trade Organization, their banking system served as savings into investment into inefficient state-owned enterprises. Thus, allocation of credit by the government seems to have been a problem with both the countries. On the whole, Mexico, though has economically recovered from its crisis and stuff, it still has got a lot to do and a long way to go in terms of being the world leaders. Let us now take a look into a video that explains what Mexico is currently and what are the business opportunities in Mexico, which will help us understand how Mexico will do well in the upcoming years. Well, guys, that would have been too much for you today. So let me conclude. Mexico has done so well in the past and will continue to do so in the future. The Mexicans have been really trying to push hard and they are trying to seal the number one spot in terms of economy. In other words, they are trying to be the market leaders of the economy. Lastly, Mexico's reforms have taken them from what they were to what they are right now. Their continued focus towards liberalization of market trade is going to take them to new heights. That's it from me, guys. Thanks for watching the video and have a nice day. Bye bye.